So Legacy of the Monsters has just finished its run, and it seems the fan base is split on it. On the one hand, you have guys like me, who wonder what its point even was, and were completely annoyed by its characters and story. On the other hand, there are people who vehemently defend this series, loving their characters in addition to the lore. Even though it seems a lot of these people didn't know Anders Holm and John Goodman were the same character until episode 9, they also apparently can't spell the word hollow. Not hallow, hollow. I know, Halloween throws you through a tizzy, but trust me on this. Then again, hollow would be a great word to describe my experience watching this series. I swear, by episode 5, I was already treating watching this show like homework. I kept putting it off until spoilers popped up in my YouTube feed, and I figured, screw it, let's get it over with. Now, going into this show, I knew we were in for trouble. We knew it was going to take place after 2014 and before King of the Monsters. Being that we knew everything was going to end with Sherbatzilla, I wondered what of consequence this series could add to the Monsterverse as a whole. I figured whatever it did add would just add further layers of complexity, and even more questions about the world building of the series. Lo and behold, I was right. Before I start ripping this thing to pieces, let me just list a few positives I liked about the series. Note that most of these positives are from the first few episodes, which I'm sure is by design. In regards to starting off the heels of 2014, I like how we established evidence that Godzilla's emergence had an impact on the world around him. We see Godzilla evacuation routes and defense systems put in place in major cities. This acknowledgement that things have changed because of the monsters was thunderously absent from the films, save for a few background posters and placards, so it was nice to see evidence of development in the world around the story. In terms of this impact, the decision to have Kate have PTSD from her experience on the bridge in 2014 was incredibly satisfying. Not to mention that this trauma comes from Kate having witnessed Godzilla kill a bus full of children. That right there was the biggest surprise in the whole series. Since Godzilla 2014, we've seen children have this light around them, where you knew that regardless of circumstance, their safety was guaranteed. Never in a million years could I have predicted seeing a bus of children die by Godzilla's hand. That took some balls right there. Speaking of balls, I enjoyed Monarch's backstory in the 50s crew. It was nice to see a group of characters with a collective interest and wonder in these new and fantastical creatures coming together to unlock their secrets. If the show had purely been about them going on adventures far before the events of the films, the show probably would have had more success. However, the show isn't really about them, is it? No. Our true main characters are a group of some of the most loathsome assholes I've ever seen in a TV show. We've got an abrasive hypocrite, an entitled brat, and a meek punching bag. Oh god, where to start with these clowns? I guess we'll start with Kate, a character who I initially had positive things to say about. We're introduced to her as the daughter of a man who disappeared, stumbling upon his second family in Japan. You would think this would spark some sympathy for her, but all she does is act like a bitch around her newfound half-brother and his mother. You'd think that she'd have some kind of empathy for these people who were also lied to, being that they were both equal in their treatment, and her past as a cheater might make her feel inclined to act sympathetically towards them. However, hypocrite that she is, she projects all of her guilt on her father to no real payoff. She spites him for his decisions, though they mirror hers, and we're left to watch her take emotional swings at this innocent dude the whole show. Seriously, can anyone tell me what her half-brother Kentaro did to earn this treatment? Everyone is constantly doubting him and regarding him like a scourge, and I honestly can't remember a single reason why. Remember when Kate met Kentaro's mom, and she welcomed her into her home with open arms? Cut to Kentaro meeting Kate's mom, where he's regarded as vermin. Why? Remember when the group was stuck in the tundra and he says he saw shelter? Instead of listening to him, he gets chastised and talked down to. Then he literally ventures out alone to find help, proves he was right all along, saves the day, and who gets the credit? What?
I never thought I'd thank someone for abandoning their family, but here we are.
Remember how May, his ex, treats him like a piece of trash throughout the whole story, yet we're never really given a reason why? People break up. It happens. How come he gets subjected to constant beratement and can never stand up for himself? I honestly don't know what else to say about him as a character.
The son is an artist.
I'm pretty sure the only reason he's there is for the sake of juxtaposition against the female characters. If modern Hollywood has taught me anything, it's that in order to build a female character up, you have to tear a male character down. Hence, the whipping boy. whose primary function in the story is to get constantly lambasted by unfocused female aggression. The greatest perpetrator of which is May. I think, regardless of where you stand on this series, we can all agree that May is the worst character in the Monsterverse. She comes into the story acting better than everyone else, but throughout the story, her character manages to become even more hateable. Whether it's refusing to return her ex-boyfriend's old files, or costing a company millions because they refused to promote her in her first week, May retains this unearned confidence and moral superiority as everything she touches turns to dog shit.
You're such a disappointment.
May commits corporate espionage, abandons her family, sells out her friends, and is otherwise a liability to the group's safety. Kate is a cheater who constantly nags in every situation, even down to having a problem with wearing a bulletproof vest when dealing with guys with guns. They're both hypocrites and tend to insult almost every character they come across. Yet, Kentaro is the one who catches flack throughout the story.
I didn't mean to volunteer you back there.
You did.
Sorry.
Remind me, what are his irredeemable sins again?
You don't get to ghost me for months and then show up out of nowhere treating me like tech support.
Aw, did he ghost you, May? On the topic, how's that family of yours? Nah, I'm just kidding. Who wouldn't want to spend time around this enchantress?
How did you enjoy your time in Alaska?
I didn't. And that'll be reflected in my TripAdvisor review. 2 stars? Stop it. Is there a bar anywhere, somewhere?
Not open yet.
1 star.
Look, like him or hate him, there is one crucial flaw with the modern group in this series, titled Legacy of the Monsters. None of them are consistently interested in legacy or monsters. Throughout the duration of the show, each episode has to spend time convincing the characters to stay the course. The first few episodes it was fine, as we're still gathering momentum, but if by the 7th and 8th episodes of the series, these characters still aren't committed to their story, then why should the audience be? Yet the people who love this show dismiss this argument, saying that the people who don't like the show are morons, because we came into Monarch, Legacy of the Monsters, with the expectation of seeing monsters and not a human story. No, you're right. It's about the characters. I'll give you that in terms of the 50s group. At least they want to be in the show. They want to see what we want to see. Also, their actions could bring new information into the series that would be meaningful. I liked learning how Monarch began, and what adventures they went on. At least that's interesting. Also, the cast is solid. The combination of Wyatt and Kurt Russell playing the same character throughout the years was very well done. Even though I couldn't imagine what level of abuse Anders Holm subjected himself to become John Goodman in 15 years, I still think he captured the spirit of the character. As for Keiko, I liked her too, but with an asterisk. Let me explain. Keiko is introduced to the plot as a force of nature of a woman, always the smartest and most confident in the room with a wisdom beyond her years, and no hesitation at being the first one through the door. These are the qualities of the typical strong female character of modern day, and it would be fine if the show didn't make a point of trying to write every other female character in the same fashion.
You do not get to tell me what I need.
Okay, get ready for my biggest gripe with the show. In the simplest terms, this show is anti-men. This isn't an exaggeration or attempt at being clickbaity, it's just an observation. The show's premise literally spawns from a deadbeat father abandoning not one, but 2 families. It begins with John Goodman apologizing for being a terrible dad. Hiroshi's real father isn't in the picture, Shaw's dad was a drunk.
Maybe we could sober him up and ask him.
There is no such thing as a stable male role model in this show. Let me ask you, men. If you had to choose a male character to identify with on this show, who would it be? The gung-ho general who can only look at a problem through a military lens?
Barbecue time, everybody!
Magnificent!
The awkward corporate lackey constantly being the butt of the joke?
I'm the troll from the basement that you tried to avoid in the break room.
They don't come much more harmless than the Timberite.
The meek follower who allows himself to be belittled? The absentee father? The goofy sidekick? The soldier who wants to shoot cats?
Just more goddamn cats. I think we should start shooting them. Oh, come on, man. I'm serious.
Gotta love the stereotype of any white guy with a gun being an utter sociopath. The only male characters immune from this treatment are the Russells and Anders Holm, whose star power most likely insulates them from such treatment. Even then, character-wise, we know Randa is going to eventually let down his surrogate son, and a defeated Shaw will spend 30 years of his life wallowing in a hole. Aside from them, there is such a female-centric vibe to this show, and you can feel the animosity bleed from the dialogue. You could make a drinking game out of every time a male character has to lower his head in shame. I swear, if you reverse the male and female roles in the show, it would be hammered for its misogyny. My theory is that this show was using the Godzilla IP to bait in an audience. From there, the writers use the characters as mouthpieces for their own frustrations, where women get to lash out at men who are written not to fight back.
You're learning.
It's honestly one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen. It's so overt and all-encompassing that it literally ruins the one character it works for. Keiko should have been the standout strong female character of the series, but it gets diluted when every other female character is as confident and vocal as her. When every female character tells it like it is, yet everyone likes them regardless of how insufferable they are.
I like you.
I like you.
It just becomes insulting to the audience, most of whom I assume are males. Can we just be honest with ourselves and say that Godzilla is a typically male interest? I'm sure there are female fans, not that I've ever met one, but does that really justify making their feelings the focal point of a Monsterverse series? On the topic, I just want to clarify why we're seeing so much backlash at the introduction of a lesbian character in the series. I think a lot of fans have trouble articulating this point, but when you introduce a lesbian character into a series whose sexuality is completely inconsequential to the narrative, and surround them with male characters who are written to look incompetent and detestable, it comes across as a statement that men are undesirable and incapable, therefore women should only look to each other for companionship. It's not so much rampant homophobia as it is a feeling of being denigrated. As a guy who came into this show looking for a story about monsters and the organization that studied them, instead being met with a story about women lamenting their experiences with weak men and showing not a modicum of interest in monsters, it comes across as insulting and completely tone-deaf to the source material. It's an introduction of the same detrimental elements that ruined other franchises into a series that, thus far, hadn't been tainted by it. To lifelong fans, it comes across as the writers saying that our engagement is less important than the potential engagement of new, more politically desirable viewers. Honestly, I shouldn't even need to be discussing this because gender and sexuality have nothing to do with Godzilla or monsters. So can you really blame the fans for being annoyed that their entertainment has been undermined in favor of pushing the same tired agenda that saturated every other form of conceivable media? I don't know about you, but I turn to Godzilla movies as a relief from modern political and social unpleasantness, not to have it spitefully shoved in my face. To add insult to injury, the writers keep the audience on the hook by showing monsters. Occasionally. Yeah, I can't say I'm too surprised about that. One of the best laughs I had recently was when I saw someone upload a video of the full fight of Godzilla vs. the Ion Dragon, and it was about a minute long. 10 episodes for 60 seconds of monster fighting. What a surprise. On the subject, Godzilla did exactly as expected, being absent for the majority of the series, appearing when prompted like Pavlov's dog, only to disappear into the ether immediately afterward. You guys must be seeing it at this point. Monsterverse Godzilla is the saddest Godzilla, in the sense that he rarely does anything of his own accord, and is usually only present out of a sense of narrative obligation. He doesn't have his own story or character. He's just a plot device in other people's boring stories. It's honestly depressing at this point at how used he feels in this universe. He's literally what would have become of Kong if he hadn't broken from those chains. He sells the tickets, gets wheeled out on cue, and then is returned behind the curtain. I know I've made this point 1,000 times throughout my videos, but come on guys, look at this series. He walks out of the water, gets blown up, and walks away. He gets lured out by a beacon, swats it, and swims away. He's buried in the desert, wakes up, and walks away. Then he shows up in the last 10 minutes, instantly kills a bad thing, and walks away. It's so boring, tedious, and deadens my soul knowing the potential this character has. But the show's not about him, right? It's about the other monsters. You know, the ones who show up in the last 5 minutes of the episode, do a thing, and leave never to be seen again. Honestly, I don't know why people get hyped for new additions to the Monsterverse. If you're not Godzilla or Kong, you're guaranteed to make a brief appearance and disappear forever. Even Rodan and Mothra weren't excluded from this treatment, making their debuts and never being heard from again. So why would you care about the Ion Dragon or the Mother Longlegs or the Ice Dragon or fucking Doug? They show up, we clap, they're gone. Is that really enough to maintain your engagement with this series? Well, sure, the characters sucked and the monsters were underwhelming. At least we added more to the Hollow Earth lore, right? Buddy, are you trying to piss me off? The Hollow Earth was an interesting concept when it was first introduced in King of the Monsters. Since then, we've only had more questions about how it works. Why does Kong need a portal to access it, yet Godzilla can bore a hole into it? How is there sunlight in the center of the Earth? What is with the blue power running through it? Well, Legacy of the Monsters heard your questions, and decided to give you more questions. Apparently, now there's a realm called Axis Mundi, where time moves differently and has to be accessed through portals. We haven't even nailed down the basics for how the Hollow Earth functions, yet this show is adding new layers of complexity to it. I honestly think this is an attempt by the writers to create a plot device so convoluted that people will give up trying to understand it and accept whatever the story tells them. It's their way of saying, we're gonna do whatever we want, so just clap and assume it makes sense. Let me tell you, nothing was more cringe-inducing than seeing Godzilla walk through a portal. It's like a visual representation of this franchise stepping into the realm of schlock. It's rather appropriate seeing what's in store for us next. By this point, I think it's safe to assume that we'll never get any real answers to the questions we've had thus far in the series, and that the fans who abide this nonsense will shame us for having those questions to begin with. I cannot express to you how annoying it is that people applaud this nonsense and justify it by saying, well, it's a story about a big lizard, so it doesn't have to make sense. Yes, it does. This franchise is called the Monsterverse. Monster verse, as in universe, as in established setting. In order to earn the audience's investment in this universe, you have to suspend their disbelief. Therefore, you have to have an internal logic to your world and its functions in order to retain that investment. It's not the audience's job to keep faith as you spin more and more convoluted and contradictory nonsense into your story. In order to convince the audience to suspend their disbelief, you have to give us something to believe in. Do any of you believe that there are any actual plans for the Monsterverse? Do you believe they intend to ever establish firm ground rules for their stories? Do you believe they even care? I'd say at this point, the writers treat this series as either a cash cow or a soapbox, definitely not handling it with the reverence it deserves. How ironic that a show based around answering questions and solving mysteries seems to spite the idea of it. It's a charade. They put Godzilla in a hook and waited for a bite. Once they have you, what do? More bait, more filler, more proof that they don't even know what to do with this IP. This is why I don't understand the point of this show. It adds questions, not answers, and the answers it gives us are ones we already knew. Did you know there's a Hollow Earth and other monsters around the world? Yes, King of the Monsters already addressed that, and Godzilla vs. Kong already told us that they're all gone. So why do we spend so much time trying to unravel a mystery that's already been resolved? I don't understand why the show is set in a time with the least amount of creative maneuverability in the series. It longs to be taken seriously, yet it's a prelude to a schlockfest. It relies on Godzilla's imagery to draw in an audience to tell a story that isn't about Godzilla, appealing to neither Godzilla fans or non-Godzilla fans. Its characters are unlikable, and its story felt bloated to fit a 10-episode run. Dude, they couldn't even deliver on a good Kurt Russell callback, where Shaw is facing down the Ion Dragon, and I literally said out loud, fuck you too. A callback to John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah, fuck you too!
But no, couldn't even do that right. How do you fail down to the microscopic level? The truth is, Kurt Russell was really the big draw for me, more so than Godzilla. I recently rewatched The Hateful Eight and The Thing, and also saw Big Trouble in Little China for the first time. The guy's got a tremendous screen presence, and I was hoping that he'd leave his mark on the Godzilla series in a memorable way. Really though, he wasn't given much to do. Sure, he's got his plans and motivations, but nestled in a story whose events, by design, don't impact the films around it, you never get the impression that anything he or any other character does matters. I guess after Tywin, I shouldn't be surprised. In closing, the only thing I can say that I took away from this series is that at least the theme suits Monsterverse Godzilla, portraying him as a deadbeat dad. This trauma-causing figure that's never around, only occasionally making appearances before abandoning you again without a word. Sure, he'll show up to bail you out once or twice, but you never really get to know or understand him. All you can really do is hope to see more of him. Maybe on your next birthday, chap.